Picture a moment that you know intimately. You are standing in a room, maybe at a family gathering, a corporate meeting, or in your own kitchen. Someone looks at you and delivers a quiet, calculated jab. Maybe it is dressed up as a joke. Maybe it is a backhanded compliment delivered with a smile. Or maybe it is a flat-out dismissal of something you just said. What happens inside your body in that exact fraction of a second? If you are like most people, your heart rate spikes. A knot forms in your throat. Your brain immediately scrambles for a response, desperate to defend yourself, to prove them wrong, to fire back with a clever comeback, or to over-explain yourself so they realize they misunderstood you. You feel an overwhelming, almost physical urge to react. But what if I told you that the moment you react, you have already lost? When someone attacks you, the most devastating response you can give them is not anger. It is not a brilliant argument, and it is definitely not an apology. The most devastating response you can give them is total, unbothered silence. Today, we are going to dismantle the mechanics of toxic behavior and reveal why reacting to a narcissist or a manipulator is the exact trap they want you to fall into. We are going to explore the psychology of the open loop, dive deep into the philosophy of Friedrich Nietzsche to understand why arguing is for weak minds, and teach you a strategy so powerful it creates absolute psychological vertigo in the person attacking you. By the end of this video, you will never look at an insult the same way again. You will learn how to turn your silence into an impenetrable weapon, neutralizing toxic people without ever raising your voice. Chapter 1. The anatomy of the trap. To defeat a manipulator, you must first understand the game they are playing. And the hardest truth you have to swallow is this: they do not experience relationships the way you do. When a toxic person or a narcissist says something designed to provoke you, they are not trying to have a genuine conversation. They are running a test. They are pressing a button to see what lights up. They want to know if you have a price, if your dignity is negotiable, and if your emotional state can be controlled by their words. Most people mistakenly believe that when someone attacks them, the goal is to win the argument. They think they need to present evidence, explain their side, or logically prove why the other person is being unfair. But logic is utterly useless here, because the manipulator does not care about the truth. They care about power. When you get defensive, when you start explaining yourself, or when you fire back with anger, what you are actually doing is giving them a reward. You are confirming that their attack landed. You are showing them exactly where your soft spots are. You are validating their significance, proving to them that they have the power to ruin your afternoon with a single sentence. In psychology, there is a framework to understand what a manipulator is trying to extract from you. They are hunting for CAV, control, approval, validation, or attention. Your emotional reaction, whether it is tears, rage, or desperate over-explaining, is the fuel that feeds their ego. It tells them they matter. Your reaction is not a side effect of the interaction. Your reaction is the entire point of the interaction. So, what happens when you completely deprive a predator of their food supply? Chapter 2. The weakness of words and the herd morality. We live in a culture that rewards noise. We are conditioned to believe that the loudest person in the room is the strongest, that always having a comeback is a sign of intelligence, and that remaining silent means you are weak, submissive, or defeated. But Friedrich Nietzsche, one of the most dangerous and brilliant philosophers in history, saw this completely differently. Nietzsche understood that the desperate urge to speak, to respond, to justify oneself is actually a profound symptom of weakness. When you feel compelled to justify your position, you are revealing that you are trapped in the desire to be accepted and validated. Nietzsche called this the herd morality, the behavior of individuals who live under the expectations of others, terrified of being misunderstood or judged. Think about it carefully. Why do you argue? You argue because a fragile voice inside your ego is terrified that if you do not win the debate, your value as a human being diminishes. You argue because you need the other person to understand you in order for you to feel secure. But Nietzsche argued that argumentation is merely a defensive armor. It is a desperate cry from a fragile ego trying to maintain control of a narrative. The truly powerful individual, the Übermensch, does not need to win debates or engage in cheap emotional games. They do not need to convince anyone of their strength, because true strength lies in not needing to prove it. The moment you start defending yourself to a toxic person, You have stepped onto their battlefield, and you are playing by their rules. You have shifted from a position of absolute authority to a position of defense. You have voluntarily handed them the role of the judge, and the moment they are the judge, they hold the leverage. If you want to win, you have to stop fighting the battle they designed for you. You must deploy a weapon that they cannot anticipate, cannot control, and cannot defend against. Chapter 3. The Open Loop and Psychological Vertigo. The most sophisticated psychological maneuver you can execute when attacked is the strategic non-reaction. When someone provokes you, their brain operates on a feedback loop. They take an action, and they expect a specific result. They throw a verbal punch and they wait for you to flinch, to cry, or to hit back. But when you remain completely unbothered, when you look right through them and offer absolutely zero acknowledgement that their attempt even landed, something fascinating and terrifying happens inside their mind. Because you did not react, the psychological loop stays open. Their brain keeps running the same sequence over and over, frantically searching for a resolution that never comes. They expected resistance, but they hit thin air. This creates a state of psychological vertigo. It destabilizes them. They begin to question themselves. Did you even hear what they said? Did it not bother you at all? Do you think so little of them that they do not even warrant a response? That uncertainty, that agonizing not knowing, is genuine torture for a person who thrives on controlling others. You are letting them fight a battle that you are not even participating in, and because you are not fighting, they are losing. This is the profound power of silence. Silence is not empty. Silence is an overwhelming presence. It occupies space like an invisible giant, suffocating the environment and tearing the masks off the people in the room. When you remain silent, the manipulator loses their footing. They cannot tell if their tactic is working because you are giving them no data, no emotional tells, and no map of your vulnerabilities. You become completely unreadable, and unreadable people are impossible to control. Chapter 4. The Grey Rock and the Art of Neutrality. Let us translate this philosophy into a concrete, tactical strategy you can use tomorrow. In psychology, there is a defense mechanism known as the Grey Rock method. The concept is brilliantly simple. You become as boring, flat, and unremarkable as a grey rock. You give short, vague, emotionally neutral responses. You do this not because you are defeated, but because you are intentionally starving the emotional predator of their fuel. Imagine you are in a meeting at work. A toxic co-worker named Jason decides to take a shot at you in front of the room. He smirks and says, "Well, some of us have actually been here all week doing the real work." He is baiting you. He wants you to get flustered and look defensive. The untrained, automatic response is to justify yourself. You might say, "I was in client meetings all week, Jason, you know that." And just like that, you look rattled, and the conversation is now about you defending your work ethic instead of the actual agenda. But what does the trained Machiavellian response look like? You look at Jason. You pause for 3 seconds. 3 seconds of genuine, unbroken stillness feels like an eternity in a quiet room. You do not glare, you do not scowl, you simply look at him with clinical curiosity. Then calmly, with zero emotion, you say, "Interesting point, Jason." And you immediately turn back to your notes and continue the meeting. What just happened? You denied him the reaction he desperately came for. You made his comment look incredibly small, not by insulting him back, but by refusing to treat his words as worthy of a real response. Everyone in that room felt the energetic shift. Jason pushed, you stepped aside, and he stumbled face first into the deafening silence he created. That is not passivity, that is surgical precision. To pull this off, you have to master your own internal state. You have to genuinely detach. Emotional detachment is not about feeling nothing. It is about not being owned by what you feel. It is the space between the stimulus and your response. When you pause and breathe, you reclaim your authority, moving from a reactive, frightened state into a calculated, strategic state. Chapter 5. The Mirror of Emptiness. There is a darker, deeper reason why silence is so devastating to a toxic person. It has to do with what silence forces them to look at. Human beings have a fundamental aversion to vacuums. We need to fill empty space with words, justifications, and noise. When you choose not to react, you create an emotional vacuum, and in that vacuum, you become a mirror. When a manipulator attacks you and meets total silence, they are forced to hear their own voice. They are forced to confront their own arguments without the comforting distraction of your resistance. Because they have no external enemy to fight in that exact moment, their mind turns inward. Their own insecurities, their fears of rejection, their desperation for control, all of it begins to echo back at them. They start projecting their paranoia onto your silence. Are you judging them? Did they say too much? Do you know something they don't? This is intolerable for a narcissistic ego. They rely on your chaotic reaction to validate their position. Without it, their disguise falls away. They unravel. They will often try to fill the void with more words, over-explaining themselves, doubling down or backpedaling, and in the process, they expose exactly how fragile they truly are. Nietzsche observed that average people live as slaves to their reactions. They act on impulse and speak out of the fear of being forgotten. But the person who masters silence knows that every emotional reaction is an involuntary scream revealing where to attack. When you sit in unbothered silence, you are quietly communicating to their unconscious mind. I see your game, and I am entirely above it. Chapter 6. The disproportionate consequence. But let us be realistic. Silence alone is not always the end of the story. Manipulators are opportunistic. If your silence is perceived as weakness or fear, they will push again. They will test you to see if your boundary was a fluke or a permanent pattern. This is where you must transition from silence into precision. When you do speak, you do not explain yourself and you do not argue. You use a technique that shifts the entire power dynamic of the room without you ever raising your voice or losing your composure. You reflect the moment back at them with a single calm question. If someone delivers a thinly veiled insult in front of others, you do not ignore it, but you also do not attack. You look at them calmly and you ask, "Did you mean that the way it sounded?" Or, "That came across pretty personal. Were you going for that?" Or simply, "Would you like to repeat that so everyone hears it clearly?" These questions are lethal because they force the manipulator into a corner of their own making. You are dragging their subtext out of the shadows and throwing it into the blinding light. They now have to make a choice in real time. They must either double down on their disrespect on the public record, or they must desperately backpedal. And because most toxic people are cowards who rely on plausible deniability, they will almost always backpedal. They will stutter, claim it was just a joke, and retreat. And what do you do when they backpedal? You do not laugh it off. You do not ease their discomfort. You say, "Okay, I just wanted to make sure I understood." And then you let the dead silence return. You have just demonstrated a boundary. You have shown that there is a cost to crossing you. And the secret to maintaining this power is what is known as the disproportionate consequence. If they test you a second time, your response must be noticeably colder than the first. You cut access. The warmth disappears. The engagement is pulled back. You do not announce this distance. You simply embody it. You teach their nervous system through repeated behavioral evidence that your standards are non-negotiable. Chapter 7. The birth of psychological integrity. To truly execute this, to be able to stand in the fire of someone else's provocation and remain completely still, you have to do something deeply uncomfortable. You have to kill the part of you that still desperately needs to be liked. For years, you have betrayed yourself. You swallowed your truth to keep the peace. You molded yourself to be acceptable. You engaged in compulsive explaining because you were terrified of being misunderstood. Carl Jung called this the inflation of the persona. You became the mask of the good, accommodating person, and you forgot who you actually were beneath it. You believed that setting boundaries was selfish and that absorbing mistreatment gracefully made you the bigger person. But absorbing abuse without consequence isn't dignity. It is complicity. It is a silent endorsement of your own destruction. When you finally stop explaining yourself, everything changes. You stop being a supporting character in someone else's emotional drama and reclaim your internal authority. Psychological integrity means you no longer negotiate your essence to fit external expectations. You realize that you do not owe anyone a justification for your existence, your boundaries, or your silence. When you adopt this posture, the world begins to treat you differently. The people who used to drain you realize that the hooks they used to control you, guilt, shame, fear of conflict, no longer work. The emotional vampires lose their food supply. The narcissists experience a profound crisis because they can no longer use you as a mirror for their own grandiosity. And what do? They call you cold. They call you arrogant. They tell people you have changed. Let them. Their disappointment in your boundaries is not a crisis. It is the relationship adjusting to a reality where you are finally a participant, not a resource. Conclusion. The untouchable mind, true power, does not shout. It does not explain. It does not argue. And it does not desperately seek validation from people who are fundamentally broken. The next time someone tries to drag you into their chaos, remember this: your attention is the most valuable currency you possess. Do not spend it on someone who only wants to bankrupt you. Pause. Take a breath. Observe their desperate attempt to control you. And then, offer them the one thing they fear more than anything else in the world: nothing. Let them drown in their own noise. Let them choke on the silence you refuse to break. You are a sovereign individual. Your peace is your fortress and your silence is your sword. Stop reacting. Stop explaining now. Go reclaim your power.